First of all, I just want to extend a warm welcome to you all here today and thank the University of Oregon for hosting us. I also, you'll hear in my introduction in a bit why I might say this, but my brother in the union movement, Mike here with the University, or the United Academics of University of Oregon, is also hosting us because this is his classroom apparently. They just settled a historic contract here at the U of O, so we're excited about that. My name is Graham Trainer. I'm proud to serve as president of the Oregon AFL-CIO, which is the statewide federation of labor unions, and I am honored to be your moderator today. And we're all here tonight because Attorney General Rayfield has launched the Safeguarding Oregon Federal Oversight Forum Series with upcoming events around the state as well. This series of forums complements the important work AG Rayfield is doing with his Federal Oversight and Accountability Cabinet and his Attorney General's colleagues across the country focused on holding the federal administration accountable to the rule of law and protecting Oregon's values. In these truly unprecedented times, AG Rayfield and other Democratic attorneys generals are some of the last lines of defense when it comes to protecting our rights and our freedoms. And we're proud that our AG here in Oregon has been fighting to push back against policies that have overstepped presidential power with legal challenges that have been highly successful so far. Yeah. And he's doing it with strong leaders like Oregon House Speaker Julie Fahey as well. And the Democratic supermajorities we have in the Oregon House with members like Representative Nancy Nathanson and Lisa Fragala. Also just want to give a shout out to other electeds in the room. We've got Lane County Commissioners Trieger and Buck. We've got Eugene City Councilor Kaczynski somewhere. Awesome, there you go. And we've also got former State Representative Phil Barnhart right here. And now more than ever, it is critical to have leaders like Speaker Fahey and her caucus to deliver a roadmap forward for Oregonians, fighting to keep Oregonians safe, provide affordable housing, make a government work, and protect and strengthen our collective bargaining and our union organizing rights. While Oregon is a bright spot, we've certainly felt the impact of what is happening at the federal level, haven't we? Working people in our communities are feeling the brunt of it all. And we'll hear about a lot of the ways that these various impacts are being felt tonight. From mass layoffs of large swaths of the federal workforce, to unilateral efforts to eliminate collective bargaining rights from hundreds of thousands of workers across the federal government, under the guise of national security, to pausing and cutting key investments and services that working people depend on, just to name a few. The destabilizing and chaotic environment working people are facing is truly taking a serious toll, isn't it? Tonight's an opportunity to hear directly from members of the community about the impacts federal overreach has on the lives of Oregonians. So a couple logistical points. Tonight's forum will be 90 minutes long. We'll start by hearing from several invited panelists. From there, we'll move to some public comment. And for public comment, we'll be calling people up to speak in groups of two. There are two mics right here, so this is the table. Each person will have 2 minutes to provide remarks. We'll start with invited testimony, and then folks that have signed in and that we're able to get to, we'll make sure that we also call you up as we're able. And please be mindful of time. I'm told that Attorney General Rayfield will keep a mean time watch. But most importantly, we're here to hear from you. He's here to hear from you. The leaders are here to hear from you. And AG Rayfield will facilitate those panels. But the primary focus of the event is for leaders, like I said, to hear from you. But we will save some time at the end for the Attorney General, Speaker, and representatives to also answer some of the questions that you've submitted in advance. So I know we've got some of those in the queue already. And with that, I'll turn it over to Attorney General Dan Rayfield for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you to everyone for being here tonight. It is a privilege to be here in Eugene. It's an incredible privilege to be here with Speaker Fahey, who I have considered a partner in my time in the legislature, and it's amazing to partner with you now in the legislature. We have the amazing Nancy Nathanson, who has always been fun in the legislature as we get up to trouble, and then Representative Fragala. We haven't had fun in the legislature yet, but I'm sure we will. So it is an honor to be here with all of you here tonight. I'm sure a lot of you are like me. When I wake up in the morning, one of the first things that I do is I check my phone, I check the news to see what has happened during the evening. It's an incredibly chaotic time. And I never know what has happened in the morning. And oftentimes my days start at 4 a.m. in the morning as Democratic attorneys general across this country and their offices start to wake up, and we begin the work of maintaining a line of sight on the Trump administration. The Trump administration is steadily and continually taking actions that are negatively impacting communities and lives across our state and across our country. And it is what doesn't get enough attention in this space. It is these actions that are being done in a democracy in the dark and without public input. It's these actions, whether they're aimed at undermining environmental protections, access to health care, stripping away the rights and dignities of vulnerable communities, that have created an atmosphere of fear and have created an atmosphere and a chilling impact across our country. Our democracy was meant to have checks and balances, co-equal branches of government. It's a government that is meant to have public input, free press, an independent judiciary, and all of those should be free from intimidation. The president seems to have forgotten this. The president seems to have forgotten this, never understood it, or worse, just plain doesn't care. And that's why we're here tonight. We're here to hear from you. Democratic attorneys general across this country are holding town halls to hear from you, so we know what is going on, because if the president will not do it, we will do it for him. Your voice in this forum does two things. One, it does not allow the Trump administration to hide from the public input when they're making important decisions across our country. Number two, it gives us, as elected leaders of the state, information so that we can better represent you. And that's better represent you in a court of law when we're holding them accountable to our Constitution, or it's in the state legislature where there's an entirely different set of tools for our communities. I want to take this moment to also emphasize something that is incredibly important right now. The president does not have unilateral power to simply disregard our Constitution or the laws that Congress passes. In other words, the president may be an incredibly powerful person, but he cannot jump into some time machine, travel back hundreds of years, become a monarch without and avoid oversight in this world. That's not how a democracy works, and that's the whole point here. If the president had worked with Congress to accomplish his agenda, we wouldn't be here today. And in response, the Oregon Department of Justice has filed 12 lawsuits to force the president to follow our Constitution and the rule of law. And these lawsuits include preventing mass layoffs, fighting the dismantling of our education department, protecting private taxpayer information, defending gender-affirming care, and preventing the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars to our state. A good example is the lawsuit we had to file last week, which was against the National Institute of Health. We're threatening funding here in Oregon. More than $240 million are at stake at the Oregon Health Sciences University. And this is stuff for things we all care about. This is about research for HIV. This is about research for cancer, research for opioid addiction, diabetes, among other things. So again, tonight we're here to hear from you. Your voices and your stories matter. And so we want to thank you for taking the time out of your day, out of your family's time when you could be at home, to share your stories with us, because democracy only works when we do it together. It only works when we commit to having difficult conversations, and then, most importantly, we act upon those conversations. So with that, I want to turn it over to the amazing Speaker Julie Fahey.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. I'm Julie Fahey. I am the Speaker of the House, and I am proud to represent House District 14 in the legislature, which is West Eugene and Veneta. Basically, if you live west of Chambers, in Bethel, or in Veneta, I am your state rep. We are right in the middle of the legislative session here in Salem, and it's been, honestly, pretty hectic. with everything, all of the chaos and confusion that's come out of the federal government. So it's really, really great to be back here in Eugene tonight with my community and to take a minute to just step back and talk about everything we're facing here in this state and this country, what we are doing here in Oregon to push back, and where we go from here. I want to start by saying that the legislature and the Attorney General, we're going to do everything in our power to protect the basic rights and freedoms of Oregonians and to preserve those key programs and services that Oregonians rely on, like Medicaid, Head Start, SNAP. People all around the state want to know that we are pushing back against what is happening, and I am here to tell you that we are doing that. You are not necessarily going to see me issuing 6 press releases a day about everything, every terrible executive order or thing that has happened. I cannot issue a press release about the Gulf of America or about Greenland. But I would need a whole comms team to do that. But what we are focused on is what are the things that are doing the most harm to Oregonians on the ground. I was talking with the AG before the forum, and just a little taste of what it has been like is that this week we got word that Head Start programs in Southern Oregon had their funding threatened, and they were going to close this Friday. 1,000 kids would not have a place to go next week. We just got word a couple of hours ago that that has now been reversed. The Head Start facilities do not need to close. And that is great news. I'm happy for that. But 1,000 families in Southern Oregon sat at the dinner table last night and had no idea where their kids were going to go next week to get care. The chaos and confusion that is coming out of the federal government is harming real people. And we will do everything we can in the state legislature to insulate Oregonians from that. But I know that we can't protect everything. We can't protect from all of the chaos. But I do want to say that since Trump was first elected back in 2016, we are pretty well positioned in the state of Oregon because we have been focused on passing these strong policies here in Oregon to protect our communities and defend our values. Environmental protections, LGBTQ rights, immigrant rights, reproductive rights. We have been passing legislation for the last decade that has well positioned us for this moment in time that we are in. In 2017, we codified the right to safe and legal abortion here in Oregon. In 2019, we passed the Oregon Environmental Protection Act, which means that if the federal government rolls back clean air and clean water protections, those protections will still be in place here in Oregon. And in 2021, we strengthened our sanctuary state laws. These laws matter. They are protecting lives, they are keeping families together in this state, and they reflect the values that we hold as Oregonians. But this term, the last few months, has been nothing like the first 4 years under President Trump. We are facing an entirely new level of threats to our most vulnerable communities, cuts to federal funding, including potentially devastating cuts to Medicaid that could decimate our state budgets or mean that many thousands of people will lose access to health care. This legislative session, we are focused on making sure our budget protects those essential services, especially as the federal government continues to underfund and undermine our states. We are doing everything possible to protect health care, housing, early childhood, and other programs that Oregonians rely on. But realistically, we know that we can't stop everything that's coming out of the federal government. We can't overturn every executive order or rewrite federal immigration law. There will be cuts to federal funding, and states, including Oregon, we are not set up to backfill all of those cuts. That is not how our budgets work. So people across the country, and including in Oregon, are going to truly be harmed by these cuts. But we are doing everything we can to stop everything that is within our power, and we are not going to let up. And I am really proud to have, as partners in this fight, 2 of our local representatives, Representative Nancy Nathanson and Lisa Fragala. Both of them have been tireless advocates for our Oregon values, and I'm glad that they could join us tonight, and I know they want just a minute to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Speaker Fahey. I'm Nancy Nathanson. I represent House District 13. That's basically North Eugene. I was on campus last weekend for a concert. The music was glorious. joyous. And I realize that those are words that are absent from my vocabulary while the legislature is in meetings Mondays through Fridays. And I don't think there's very much that we're going to describe as joyful about the topics we discussed tonight. For example, I'm alarmed about slashing budgets for programs approved by Congress, giving access to computers and decision-making powers to people who have not taken an oath of office or even completed background checks. I'm alarmed about removing access to public information, firing auditors, and now I'm going to take a minute to focus on something that you probably don't hear very much about, but I do work on it as one of my assignments in the legislature. On March 31st, the President extended the national emergency over ongoing malicious cyber activities. He extended a national emergency. That is very much at odds with what the administration did. They slashed nearly 40% of the budget for the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, and the election infrastructure ISAC is closed. We can easily picture law enforcement protecting us against crime. Badges, uniforms, chase cars. We also need detectives, security, and enforcement to face the new cyber gangs, the new nation-state adversaries who are waging cyber attacks and basically cyber war on a daily basis. Abruptly pulling the plug on a national security program is not just a budget matter. It's a dangerous threat to our security. It's more than our individual bank accounts at risk from some sort of individual scam or fraud. We are now left to defend our power grid, our hospitals, and our schools. Attorney General Dan Rayfield and others in the state government are now left with a much bigger task to protecting Oregonians.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. My name is Lisa. Oops, hold it closer. I always say treat it like an ice cream cone and you're going to lick it. My name is Lisa Fragala, and I'm honored to represent House District 8, which is Central and South Eugene, and it also includes a little bit of the Crow-Applegate-Lorraine Valley. I am very honored to be here tonight. I'm looking forward to hearing from community members. I know that I have been hearing for the last 3 months a lot, and when I've been having constituent coffees and in emails, that these issues at the federal level are really top of mind. And to begin to think about that with you as a community is a really important first step for me. But I also want to let you know that I have been really focused on ensuring that my office is a place where people can come to get information about what is happening. I've made it a real priority to share the information that the Attorney General is doing, share information about what the Attorney General is doing. And I've made it a real focus for my office as your state representative to also be a place where people can go for support. So people who have found themselves unemployed because of some of the federal actions can reach out to my office and get support with unemployment insurance. So to begin with, I want to always be a listener to what the community is saying, but I also want to support at that level of resource and action. And then as a state representative, I serve on the Higher Education Committee, Higher Education and Workforce. I serve on Housing and Homelessness, and I also serve on Labor and Workplace Standards. And in those committees, I am committed to taking action that protects the programs and services and the rights that we have in Oregon, the rights that we all value as Oregonians. And I will continue to do that work. I can give you a quick example. In the Higher Education Committee, we are seeing constant attacks on diversity, equity, inclusion within our universities. And that is something that I very actively pay attention to, and that every day that I'm in that committee that I am standing up and fighting for our university system. So thank you very much for being here.
Okay, now we're going to get right to the panelists, and I'm going to first ask Anna and Professor Greg Dotson to come up to these two seats. And the mics, I believe, on the table should amplify everything you're saying. So, welcome.
Hi everyone. You can hear me. I'm not sorry for this whole time. Hi everyone. My name's Anna Leitner. My pronouns
And just give her the stick.
Testing. Is this better? Yes. Okay, let's try this. Hi everyone. My name is Anna Lardner. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a transgender woman who used to work for Lane County as a parole information officer in the domestic violence unit. And I quit due to a few issues with LGBTQ challenges in the county and how they handled that. Oregon is a safe state for transgender people, for non-binary people. It is a place that we call home because it is somewhere that we feel safe. Since leaving Lane County, I've started working as a therapist, as a clinical social worker, and I provide gender affirming care by behavioral health for minors who are struggling with their own gender journey. I'm also a member of the Transgender Alliance of Lane County, which is a local advocacy group that focuses on pressuring local government to improve and defend transgender rights in the area. I'm here today to talk about transgender health care, and specifically how the federal government has attacked transgender health care over the last few months. And I do this not just because transgender and non-binary people rely on this health care, but because attacks on trans health care are attacks on all health care. We just happen to be the tip of that spear that the federal government will use to divide us on other health care issues. As a therapist who provides gender affirming care to minors, I have seen firsthand the impact that this terrifying climate has had on the young people that I work with. People who are much more anxious, who have much higher rates of depression, much higher rates of suicidality and risk. These are people who years ago came into their gender because we learned as we get older that our gender assigned at birth is not our gender as we experience and live it. And Oregon has been a haven for that. Unfortunately, a lot of that requires federal dollars to support, specifically via Medicaid and Medicare. Medicaid specifically for young folks and Medicare for older people who are on their own gender journeys. And in those instances, the federal climate has become increasingly hostile towards Medicare and Medicaid funding towards trans people. We've also seen a horrific executive order that has banned gender affirming care for those under the age of 19, followed by an equally horrific executive order that equated gender affirming care and the perpetuation of what the administration calls gender ideology to child abuse, when we know medically that it is in fact the opposite. That child abuse is when we don't allow young people to explore their true genders and receive the care that they need. And this care is not just behavioral health like I provide, it's also social transition supports in the school, in someone's family. It's also medical supports through hormone replacement therapy. These are things that young people need, and these are things that I know that the Attorney General's office has thankfully sued to stop this executive order from going into effect. One of the questions I have tonight is, what is the status of that lawsuit and what are the next steps? And what concerns do you have as that moves through different levels of court up to the Supreme Court, where it is likely to face a significantly more hostile environment from the judicial branch there? A related concern is just about Medicare and Medicaid conditioning. We're already seeing examples of the federal government conditioning local grants on whether or not that recipient of the grant either recognizes gender ideology or provides gender affirming care. What will happen when, not if, but when the feds say that you cannot use Medicaid or Medicare funding for any gender affirming care? Our community wants to know what the state of Oregon will do legally to stop that illegal and unethical order, and then what backstops, and maybe this is a question more for our elected representatives, Fahey and Fragala and others, what backstops are in place locally in Oregon to protect OHP's provisions for gender-affirming care if that federal stream halts. The last thing I want to speak to is that because Oregon has been such a long-standing ally for LGBTQ rights and such a safe haven for trans and non-binary people like myself, I want to know what message you can convey to the community to allay some of those deep-seated fears that we are having in this time. Right now, the trans community, the non-binary community, and the immigrant community are the tip of that spear that the administration is using to divide us. And we want to hear from our elected representatives who have power what they can do to protect us and what they are doing on a daily basis. And again, I want to emphasize that in some of my conversations with local government, there has been a false binary created that, oh, it's the 1% of trans people versus the 99% of other people who don't need that care. And I really want to emphasize that that binary is a dividing binary that this right-wing administration is using to divide us on various ideological fault lines. It is important to remember that those attacks on trans care and those attacks on trans rights are attacks against all of our rights. We just happen to be first in line. So please tell us what you are doing to defend these things from both a legal standpoint, a political standpoint, and then what protections you plan to offer going forward as we get deeper into this crisis at the federal level. Thank you so much.
I think we're going to go to a question and answer period at the end. And so right now, the hope is to take testimony. This is an important set of questions, and why don't we put that in the question and answer period, and then we can address some of those things at that point. Thank you for being here.
Attorney General Rayfield, Speaker Fahey, Representative Nathanson, Representative Fragala, thank you so much for hosting this forum. It's such a terrific opportunity for people in the community to come and talk to you. I can speak for a lot of people when I say, when we see you in court fighting this, it gives us a bit of hope that this is not going to happen without some protests. They tell us that their plan is to allow power plants to pollute more. They want cars to pollute more. They want the oil and natural gas production to pollute more. They want to get rid of climate change regulations. And I think this is a really important point. That's rhetoric at this point. Those regulations have not been changed. They're all in the books. And as each of those changes occur, I am hopeful that Attorney Generals like you, Attorney General Rayfield, and others will be there to stand in the way and make sure that they comply with the law. There is one issue that they are harming the environment with right now. I'm not saying it's the only one, because certainly firing the workers is very serious, and I was happy to see that labor and others have been pushing back on that. But and that has to do with funding. One of the first steps they did was say, we're going to stop providing funding that we have already committed to give to you, that Congress told us to give to you. Those are funds for clean water, for clean energy, for environmental justice. They're funds that our communities depend on. And we have tried this before. The White House says, well, we don't have to spend that money. We can just decide not to. President Nixon tried that. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. Congress passed a law that said, no, you can't do that. So in a word, this administration is acting unlawfully, and I use that word very carefully and on purpose. And so it made me very happy when I saw you report saying, no, that is unlawful. We are going to stop that. And I wish you the best of success in that. These threats to environmental protection are sometimes have a way of feeling distant or remote. As we think about it, threats to Head Start, threats to immigration, people's medical care, all of that seems immediate and raw. But these changes are going to be very important, and they're very important to our children, they're very important to the future. And if it seems remote to you, think about what's going to happen about when they have fired 400 BPA workers. And are those transmission lines going to prevent sparks? Are they going to be well maintained under their vegetation management plan this summer? With no National Weather Service, are we going to know when the heat waves come? Are we going to know when we're most vulnerable? And now that they have fired the wildfire fighters, what's Oregon going to look like this summer? And I think everything that you can do on those issues is just extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna and Greg, much appreciated. Next up, Ken Hubbard and Kate Shadone, and on cue, or in the queue, will be Carolyn Stein and Dre Charles. So coming up after next. So welcome, Ken and Kate.
Hello, thank you for being here. My name is Ken Hubbard. I'm a lead officer working for TSA at the Eugene Airport. I'm there for making sure you get on the plane safe and that everything on there is safe for you to be there. I need you to know that I'm not here so I don't get in trouble. I'm not speaking for TSA. I'm not speaking for Oregon TSA nor the Eugene Airport. I'm speaking for myself, telling my story, as well as officers that work under me who are afraid to speak out because of consequences that they'll have. For nearly 30 years, I was a middle school teacher, locally most of that, and a member of local and national teachers unions. I knew, and I still know, that the union was there to assist me in times of need, if I needed to be protected from unfair work practices and bargaining for reasonable wages. I continue to be a member of this new career to support me, to give me a voice in the fight for fair contracts. Losing this bargaining agent is a step backwards. When I finished my teaching career, I was told by my boss, my wife, that I was not done working yet. Something about still needing insurance. With the advice of a friend, I became an officer within TSA. I proudly hold the core values of TSA to the foundation of how I live my life every day, with integrity, with respect, and with commitment. I'm shaken to my foundation, to my soul, how this current federal administration has no understanding of those words. It is very disheartening. In changing careers, I took nearly a 50% cut in wages, but under President Biden, we were able to negotiate contracts and made much needed gains to our pay and added protections to our workers. We still are the least paid agency and compared to all other government agencies, but we feel that we're on the right path. AFGE made that happen with the support of the members of many government officials. Since January 20th, the morale of the officers under me have plummeted. We are afraid of losing our jobs. We are infuriated with the continual changes and perceived plan to frustrate officers and other government employees into retiring early or quitting. We are discouraged that anyone that does not look like me, a straight white male, is looked down upon and attacked. We know that diversity is only a benefit to our job and everyone in general. We know that employees that are happy and respected do better, more efficient work, and even go above and beyond. We know that workers that feel that they are paid fairly and protected are our best assets in any field. That is why we must have union representation. An example of the disruption that I just talked about is about the list of 5 things that you did this week that was demanded by Elon Musk. I unfortunately had to go through that. In that, I didn't hear about it through my supervisors or my management. We heard it Saturday evening, hours before the airport closed, and it was through social media. I didn't have a chance to get good advice from my management, which I trust, and my supervisor, nor my union. I went through this. I did talk to my officers that were below me, said, here's some good advice of what to do. I unfortunately did not follow that good advice. I did say my 10 things as overachiever. I'm sorry, my 5 things. As an overachiever, I did far more than 5, but I added some thoughts in there that got me in trouble. I currently have a letter of reprimand that I cannot fight without someone else there. My union cannot support me in that, and I knew I was going to have some type of consequences. I was willing to do that for my team, but it's nice to have someone on my back that's going to help me out. Why what I do for TSA is important to you. And there's a threat at the Senate that being rid of TSA in 3 years is a major concern. Over my 6 years at TSA, I have had the pleasure of working at the Eugene Airport. I thoroughly enjoy interacting with the passengers and the public making them feel comfortable and safe as they fly. I take pride in the daily compliments from the passengers about how wonderful and friendly my team is. I enjoy carrying out my duty to ensure the safety of people in commerce. Over my time here, I have dealt with numerous scares though. I've inspected a checkbox that tested positive for explosives. While opening that box, found that it was labeled as an explosive, tannerite, which is a material used in exploding targets. After finding out a little more information, it was not that. It was a display that was tested positive because the boxes that were made or stored were in the place that they made the tannerite itself. So we had residue. But it was a scare. I've also dealt with a carry-on bag that what on the x-ray looked like a rocket-propelled grenade. It ended up being an Olympic torch, but very, very similar. It was quite a pucker factor, to say the least. I have had the unfortunate opportunity to come across a handgun through the x-ray that someone's carrying onto the plane. In our little airport in Eugene, we get a handgun about every 5 to 6 weeks. There's a reason that we're trained to find these dangerous things. Were these passengers intending to do harm? Probably not, but we don't know. We don't know what a terrorist looks like. Are we willing to take that risk without professionals that are cared for, protected, and respected? We are enticing another 9/11 incident. Thank you.
I want to give a big thanks to Attorney General Rayfield and to his team for hosting this forum this evening. It's so important that we
You have to hold the microphone closer.
swap.
We'll swap. You got it?
Stand up. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say it's so important that we have this space as Oregonians to speak out and stand up for our values. I consider those to be access to healthcare, education, and basic human rights. The Trump administration is doubling down on its mission to defund Planned Parenthood. But what does that really mean for us? Well, it means that millions of low-income people may get kicked off their health insurance and be blocked from getting care at Planned Parenthood because we provide abortion and gender-affirming care services. This isn't just a threat. We know this is happening now across the country. Family planning programs have been slashed or frozen. Gender-affirming care is being stripped away at federal and state levels. In Oregon, Planned Parenthood provides care from what we call A to B, which means abortion to vasectomies. We serve over 100,000 patients every single year, and a majority of those patients are on the Oregon Health Plan. And our sex education programs are also under attack. We reach over 30,000 people with inclusive, accurate, and age-appropriate information. We are proud safety net providers, meaning we never turn people away. Not for lack of insurance, not for lack of income or ability to pay, and certainly not for lack of immigration status. We provide more breast, chest, and cervical cancer screenings than any provider in the state. We're the top provider of STI testing and treatment. And in rural areas where healthcare providers are few and far between, we are often the only access point. So when I say that we provide care no matter what, I mean it. The Trump administration, backed by what I consider his billionaire bestie, Elon Musk, wants to defund us. They're absolutely obsessed with us. They're pushing a dangerous and extremist political agenda. They're willing to take away routine, preventative health care just to score points against us. Even though our doors are open, our patients are showing up and they're unsure and they're often scared. if they're going to be able to get the service that they need, and if we'll be open in the future for those same services. Our staff are on edge, just like we all are. We don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow to hear a headline, an executive order, a decision by SCOTUS that fundamentally changes the way that we provide health care. We need politicians out of our exam rooms. On a personal note, I'm the mother to a 21-year-old daughter, the same age as so many people on this campus. And it's so disheartening to see that she has fewer rights today than her grandmother did in the 1970s. I'm grateful to Eugene April. I'm grateful to the ACLU and the Democratic AGs that have taken this fight to the courts. We know you have our backs. But I want to be clear that this fight does not stop at the courthouse steps. I know that our members of Congress are going on April recess next week, and I want one message loud and clear for them to hear and to take back to DC. No cuts to Medicaid. Now more than ever, we need to stand together and show extremist, dangerous politicians, you might pick a fight with us, but you won't win. Thank you.
Thank you both for your words. Next up is Carolyn Stein and Dre Charles, and on deck are Jesse Maldonado and DJ Quattrochi.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Carolyn Stein, and I'm the Executive Director at Food for Lane County, the regional food bank that serves communities across our area. And I'm here to talk about a growing crisis, food insecurity, and the devastating impact that federal budget cuts are having on our ability to meet basic nutritional needs right here at home. Each month, Food for Lane County serves an average of 12,700 households through our network of food pantries and partner agencies. That's tens of thousands of our neighbors, children, seniors, veterans, and working families who rely on us for support. This year, the U.S. Department of Agriculture canceled the Commodity Credit Corporation Food Purchasing Program, a decision that immediately impacts the volume and quality of food that we can distribute to those individuals and families in need. This program historically supplied Food for Lane County with about 15% of our total food inventory. This equates to a staggering loss of over 1.2 million pounds of food that we were counting on to feed children, seniors, and working families across Lane County for the next year. And this isn't just any food. These were building blocks of healthy meals, meat, eggs, fresh dairy, and produce. These are the items families ask for the most, and they're also the hardest to afford for people living paycheck to paycheck. These cuts couldn't come at a worse time. Our community is facing the highest levels of food insecurity we've seen in recent memory. Since 2022, the Lane County Food Pantry Network has reported a 101% increase in people turning to food pantries to just meet their basic needs. That is not a statistic, that is a signal. Families are struggling, and no one should have to choose between food and paying for rent, utilities, medications, or other essentials. Food for Lane County is doing everything we can to stretch the food that we have, and it's simply not enough. With this loss, we'll be forced to make hard decisions. These are staples that we will no longer be able to provide, and pantries will have less food to give. Access to nutritious food is a basic human right, and it's our shared responsibility to make sure that every person in every zip code has what they need to thrive. Thank you for your time and for standing with us as we work to ensure that no one in Lane County goes hungry.
Keep going.
Mic check. Check.
Let's just roll.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. My name is Dre Charles, he, him, his. I'm the executive director of our local chapter of the NAACP, which is the nation's oldest civil rights organization. Our mission has always been to advocate for and protecting the rights of all Oregonians, particularly our Black and brown communities. As you all are aware, the current administration has found some troubling ways to weaponize existing structures intended to protect and support all of us. We have seen federal funds and policies used to target communities engaged in advocacy, such as threatening orgs like the NAACP as terrorist organizations. We've seen civil rights protections meant to protect students of color manipulated to target those same students and those young people. And most recently, as the AG mentioned, the IRS system leveraged to monitor and intimidate our immigrant communities. So while I acknowledge that this is not the correct timing, I'd like to piggyback on Anna's questions. I'd like to hear what will you all do to ensure that we are not only shielded from these harmful actions, but what will all of you do to actively collaborate with our communities? Not for our communities, but with our communities. These communities for the longest time have had things dictated to them, things decided for them. So what are we going to do to actively collaborate with them so that these communities have active agency in their own decision-making, their own outcomes? What are you going to do to support us to also actively resist this administration? A lot of these communities are stuck in a place where they want to engage, they want to resist. Either we're afraid, we don't have the resource, we don't have the support, we don't know where to go. So what are we going to do as leaders in this fight to bring folks with us into that fight? Thank you.
Next up, DJ Maldonado and, Jesse Maldonado and DJ Quattrich.
Good idea.
Are we good? Sounds good. I can hear myself. Thank you all for being here. Representative Fragala, Attorney General Rayfield, and Speaker Fahey, Representative Nathanson. Thank you so much. My name is Jesse Maldonado. I am the Secretary of the Democratic Party here in Oregon, National Political and Labor Director for the Democratic Municipal Officials, candidate to serve on the Lane Community College Board of Directors, and more importantly, I think why I'm here today, an adjunct professor here at the University of Oregon teaching Intro to Public Policy. And what an interesting time to be teaching public policy. But you all being here, I think, is something that gives me a lot of hope. I think it's showing that democracy works. One of the things we talk about in class at the beginning of every class is the news. And one of the things I like to point back to is the work that you all are doing in the state of Oregon. Paying attention to the national stuff is tough, and we'll get to that in a minute. But one of the things that I always tell my students is that government can work, it should work, and it will work when we elect good people to serve in these positions, and you all are examples of that, so thank you. So in all of my walks of life and different roles, I've had friends, neighbors, students who have told me that they're afraid. They're afraid of going to the airport. They're afraid of going back to their home states. They're afraid of going to school. They might be even afraid to come to my class, despite the protections that are afforded to them in the U.S. Constitution and Oregon's standing as a sanctuary state. I'm immensely grateful for the work that you all do every day to continue to protect community members who look like me or have a last name like mine from the federal government's illegal and immoral attacks. Because you know, just as I do, that immigrants make our community stronger, not weaker. And we must be crystal clear that Donald Trump and Elon Musk don't get to decide who the Constitution protects in this country. So I know this is not a time for questions, but I'm going to give you one anyways. Considering that administrators have continued to say that they will follow all federal laws and guidelines, what will you do as Attorney General, Mr. Rayfield, and as representatives in our legislature ensure that these institutions, like the University of Oregon, uphold Oregon's sanctuary protections for all students and their families? Thank you for your time.
Turn on the switch.
I did, thank you. Good evening, Speaker Fahey, Representatives Nathanson and Fragala, and Attorney General Rayfield. My name is DJ Kelly Quattrochi, and I've been a resident of Eugene for over 7 years and a lifelong Oregonian. I grew up actually in Southern Oregon. I'm also a queer Mexican-American who was born in the U.S., a small business owner, former chair of the Lane County Equity and Access Advisory Board, former board member of the Oregon Pride and Business Chamber of Commerce, and a dedicated educator. I come before you today to urge you to continue to strengthen Oregon's ability to protect some of our most vulnerable populations under the current federal administration. While Oregon does have sanctuary laws, as a sanctuary state, it is terrifying to be a brown person, documented or undocumented, living under the Trump administration. I'm deeply concerned for my family and my community, all of which who can and are being targeted, can be taken without due process. We continue to need leaders, not just we need leaders who won't acquiesce to these unlawful, unconstitutional demands that are being put out. And we really need to understand the impact that is happening on our communities, knowing that this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is 3-4 months into this 4 years, hopefully only 4 years, under this administration. Since we cannot count on the federal administration to protect all who reside in the U.S., it's up to individual states and counties to step up. This also means providing protections for our LGBTQ Oregonians. As of today, I've been with my husband for 15 years, and in June we hit our 10-year wedding anniversary. We got married before same-sex marriage was federally legal, and there is a high probability that I won't see 10 years federally recognized with my husband. I know that in the eyes of Oregon, my marriage is safe. But still in the Oregon books and in the Oregon Constitution, marriage is defined as one man, one woman. So we are still complicit in keeping acts of harm and violence, even within our very liberal, pretty safe state. Lastly, we need to do better by our trans Oregonians. Between tax on access to trans healthcare, livelihood, and their very existence, our trans community not only deserves, but needs our leaders to stand up and provide more than lip service. We need action. You've already heard from my colleague Anna, who spoke more about this, and I hope that you you listen and create systemic support and change. This work isn't easy, but it's necessary. Thank you for your leadership, and I hope to see you continuing to work and support all Oregonians.
Thanks again, Jesse and DJ, and all of our first round of panelists. Now we're going to shift to the next round of panels. These are going to be 2 minutes each, and I'm going to ask Susan Malero and Matt Barber to come on down if you're still here. And on deck will be Pat Malone and Lauren Herbert. I'm going to keep time, so 2 minutes, but I think the quicker we can be, the more efficient we can get through the list. So, welcome.
Okay, mic check. So I'll try to stick to time. Hi, my name's Matt Barber. I'm an associate professor of biology here at the University of Oregon. And I want to raise one important issue. So I run a research lab here focused on infectious disease. It's funded by the National Institutes of Health, which we heard about earlier, has been a target of the Trump administration recently. But I want to speak about one program that I recently became involved with, which is PrEP. So this is an NIH-funded program to support post-baccalaureate students, so students that have finished college but need additional training in order to go on in medical or biomedical PhD programs. So I recently became lead on this program, and we have our first cohort of students this year. This was a grant that was going to support students coming to Oregon or from Oregon to receive training for the next 5 years. Last week we received what's called a termination notice from the National Institutes of Health. We were told that our funding was cut on Wednesday. On Friday, we received another email saying that we had to wrap everything up in 2 weeks. So we have trainees here in Oregon who moved to the state that wouldn't be paid for 2 weeks. So we have been working with general counsel, working with university leadership. I received another email this morning. We were talking about chaos in the administration that leaves it unclear. We might have funding for another month or two. But we're sort of scrambling on our end to keep this program going. 60 or more of these programs exist across the United States, and they all had their funding cut last week. So this is one example, and there are many similar programs that have experienced this. But I would say keep doing what you're doing. There are programs like ours all over the place. We're trying to train the next generation of biomedical scientists, and so we need federal support to do that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Susan Malero may no longer be here, but go ahead and come on up, Pat Malone and Lauren Herbert. And on deck will be Lisa Lindquist and Candy Neville.
I'm Dr. Lauren Herbert. I'm a retired pediatrician. I'm a resident of Eugene. I practiced pediatrics in Springfield and Eugene for over 28 years. Now I'm a member of United for Immigrant Justice and also work with Coalition of Progressive Churches to support immigrants. I want to thank Attorney General Rayfield and the Attorney General Office for enforcing the Sanctuary Promise Act, and to thank Representative Fahey for including the support of immigrants as part of opening statement. Most of the patients in my clinic were children, I speak Spanish fluently, so most of my patients were children of immigrants from Latin America. And I really had the pleasure of seeing them grow and change. I shared the pride that those parents had in their children. They were wonderful members of our community. During the first Trump administration, children and parents described racist comments and actions. There was occasional separation of the families. I think the Sanctuary Promise Act protected many. With the second Trump administration, I worry. The danger to the family seems greater. Schools and houses of worship are no longer safe. I'm concerned that the Sanctuary Promise Act will not be enough, as the Trump administration is not following laws and court orders. I've started to help distribute these packets. This was made by Plaza de Nuestra Comunidad, and then also Escudo Latino. These are folders, emergency preparedness folders. These are going to the schools, to health clinics, and to other community organizations to provide to families so that they can be prepared if ICE comes and they are separated. To have plans for their children, who's going to take care of them if they're taken away. So please continue to do all you can to enforce the Sanctuary Promise Act. We need to stand together to protect our children, each other, and the integrity of our community and our state.
Is this the lucky microphone? I think so. Okay.
You want to sit here?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, I'm Pat Malone, Benton County Commissioner, and appreciate the town hall here this evening. I guess my thoughts are we've been hit with a barrage of nonsense coming at us from all angles, and I think at this point it's time to regroup, and I think several people have mentioned how important it is to stand together as the evildoers are trying to divide us. And the people I talk to really are somewhat desperate, give us hope, and I think one thing that we can do to push back is, mentioned earlier, dollars have been appropriated. Let's make sure the federal government has to follow the law that's written and get those funds out to the state and the counties. Benton County runs 5 health clinics in Benton and Lynn counties, serving the most vulnerable of the population. Between us, our clinics are at risk, mainly run on federal dollars, and we need those to keep going. And I think I will quit there. I was going to start with, is there a lawyer in the house? But I thought that would be so I will end
Thank you. Candy Neville, Lisa Lindquist, and then on deck, Bonnie Mann and Jim Bronson. I believe these might be our last two panels, depending on how efficient they are.
Hey, let's give them the microphone.
They're hardly here.
Okay, we're trying.
I don't know how to turn it on.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'll turn this down.
Okay, just use that.
Put it up here.
Hi, my name's, can you hear? Because sometimes back there you can't. My name's Candy Neville. I want to start off by saying two things. The first being the one thing Trump administration did right was he united us. Here we are. Secondly, listening to you folks up there honestly reminds me of kung fu fighters. Each of you are taking on 15 to 20, possibly more of your own, and there's more down in Salem. I feel like I'm watching you kick, elbow, flip, backwards, forwards. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have an idea that I hope will be considered sometime soon, and that is the idea of the federal government having an oversight committee about us bothers me. I actually would like to see an official Oregon oversight committee regarding the federal government right now. And I would like to see other states follow. And I would like to begin with things that are so popular, even nationwide, partly to bring attention to us and to the voice of you guys, but partly because I think it would really work and really help. And one of the things is the idea of cutting our funding for fires in this state. Everyone knows, even across the nation, that causes death, harm, great distress, and everybody that I can think of loves the forest. They love our national parks. We can get attention and we can get support there. Obviously, that is either the most inept thing ever heard, it does not meet our needs, dire needs, or it's just flat out mean to undermine us. So I am not trying to be cheeky, I actually mean it. I hope that we will come up with an official committee regarding that. It doesn't just apply to our, in this case with fires, it applies to other things too, but that one's popular nationwide. It also affects our economy. And it brings highlight to the fact that they are not following Congress procedures, and they are taking away from us things we've already paid for. They have turned us into beggars for what we already own. So I ask each one of us to please consider this, and please let it happen, and let us see you later on MSNBC explaining it all to the nation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Lindquist. I have been a business owner here in Eugene for more than 20 years. I've made it through the Great Recession and COVID. It's been a joy to provide products and services that our community appreciates. Now I'm very anxious about these whiplash tariffs. Two of the vendors that I work with have paused shipping, and others have emailed saying that they're going to be passing on tariffs to me or reviewing them starting next month. The US doesn't produce bras, which is what I sell. European brands have the expertise, but over the years, production has moved from Europe to China, Vietnam, and the Philippines, which are facing 104%, 46%, and 17% tariffs. According to salary.com, the median salary for small business retail owners is $72,612, so there's not a lot of room to absorb 100% tariffs. If these tariffs stay or return, this could be devastating for businesses like mine. Small local businesses provide customer service that's not available online. We bring character to our community, and as opposed to giant corporations, the vast majority of the revenue we generate stays in our community. In addition to being a small business owner, I'm 4 credits away from earning my master's degree in economics here at the University of Oregon. Nearly all economists, except for those in the Trump administration, think that Trump's blanket tariffs are a horrible idea. Tariffs should be put in place carefully and judiciously, not by a random question to ChatGPT. I haven't heard that Americans are yearning to bring back garment worker jobs, and it wouldn't make our country safer, but it would make us poorer. In addition to tanking the stock market, irresponsible tariffs can lead to slower growth, less innovation, and potentially job losses in a recession. The power of the purse belongs to Congress, and Congress should do something about it. All of the issues I've heard this evening are important issues. It's so frustrating to wake up almost every day to news of a new assault on our democracy, on our relationships with our allies, and our basic human rights.
Thank you both so much. And our final panel will be Bonnie Mann and Jim Bronson. Go ahead and come on up. We'll just do the same thing.
Go ahead.
Hey, G. Sorry. Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, I'd like to thank you all very much for being here this evening. It's such a treasure for me. I've been a representative of Third Act, which is an organization of people over 60. And we are involved in wanting to have good services. One of the organizations that's been impacted so heavily by the Trump administration is affecting our ability to generate power here in the Northwest using our water power. The BPA, the Bonneville Power Authority, has covered its costs by selling products and services, so they've been independent. They haven't consumed government money, but they have been subject to firing of their workforce. Big workforce cuts, which include linemen, power dispatchers, substation operators, and cybersecurity experts. And unfortunately, this means that our power is going to be less reliable, and it's going to be requiring more money on our part to pay for it. And the availability is going to be a big question in the future. We're going to have increased energy costs, and we're not going to be able to generate using water power. And it's just insane that this treasury of the Northwest in our water power is not going to be continually available to us in the future. So I ask you to be vigilant when the Trump administration is cutting people that are going to be providing power for our businesses, for our schools, for our churches, for our homes, and appreciate your vigilance on doing that, and keep up the good work.
Thanks for the chance to talk to you about what's happening here at University of Oregon a bit. My name is Bonnie Mann. I'm a professor in the philosophy department here in University of Oregon. And as I hope most folks know, we have 4 students here legally studying at the University of Oregon who have received notices that their visas have been revoked. And these are students who are, were selected, from what I understand, from some sort of AI program that's looking for, certain characteristics, and then these students are attacked for that. Our students here are precious. Our international students are precious, and we need to bring the power of the state of Oregon to bear in whatever way we can in order to protect these students and reverse these visa withdrawals. And I think the big thing is that what's really effective is that legal defense costs a shitload of money. And these are not students who have that money to hand. There are fundraising efforts going on campus for those students. But what can the state of Oregon do? Great to file lawsuits about this sort of thing, but what can the state of Oregon do to materially support these students defending themselves so that they can stay here and finish their degrees? I also want to say that there are international faculty, fabulous scholars, precious colleagues who are looking for ways to leave the country right now instead of staying here under these conditions, and international faculty in my own department who are afraid to appear in public at rallies or exercise their free speech. They need our support as well.
Give it up for our panelists once again. Thank you all for being here to share your voice. We're now going to pivot to 7 or 8 minutes. I think we've got time for questions, and we've had some questions that have been submitted ahead of time. And I'm going to, these are questions obviously directed to the Attorney General and the Speaker and the legislative members here. So the first question comes from Neil, and this was a part of many of the testimonies as well. But with Trump's policies becoming more draconian, what can Oregon do to protect immigrants residing in Oregon? I'll give it to the Attorney General first.
And first, I just want to recognize that there were a lot of questions that were asked during the panels, and I just want to quickly touch on some of those briefly before getting to the question. I think one of them slightly touch on. Anna, I think you had mentioned what can the state do more broadly. What I can tell you is the Trump administration continues to attack gender-affirming care, continues to divide us in our community. We have attorneys general that are preparing for the eventualities where we're starting to threaten Medicaid funding and other things, and we are prepared, and Oregon is set to lead on those issues as they move through. I think the thing where you ask for assurances, in outcomes and how things are going to impact communities, and that's a more difficult answer to give you at this point. The attorneys general across this country can act in a specific lane early on to kind of prevent harm as best we can. I would also argue that some of the harm has already been created, and by the time we file these lawsuits, we have a chilling impact, and there's no way to ignore that reality. In this space, we're prepared to act, but at the same time, the thing that we have to do is this fight will shift towards Congress. And if Congress takes action, and they do it by passing laws and doing it viably in those categories, in those areas, it becomes much more difficult to get, and we shift. And then part of where I would say the pivot then comes to our state legislature, and I think, as you mentioned, the different tools that they have in their pocket. So I just wanted to quickly address that. Dre, there you are. Part of the question, Dre, you were asking is like, how do we better engage in communities across Oregon? We set up a cabinet prior to taking office where we really brought in folks from different communities across the state, because what we recognized as a state agency that we needed to be connected into community so that we can hear back. And I joke all the time that if I was only communicating into community via Twitter, only my mom would know about it. And so we're trying to find better ways to do that. I don't think we've got it nailed right now, and I think we need to do better in the future, and I think there's a lot of options on the table moving forward in that space. One of the other question, and this is related to, I think, the current question, which is really, and this was, how do we uphold our sanctuary promises and our sanctuary laws here in this state? What I can tell you from the Attorney General's Office and Department of Justice, what we have done, and you can actually look this if you search the Department of Justice and you search toolkits. We have a section within our Department of Justice that is out in community talking to people about what your rights and responsibilities are. We've been engaging in education. We've been engaging in different areas to really make sure that those laws are known. We have what I can tell you is the influx of community groups needing trainings for us to be out in the community so people can know have only increased. But what I will tell you for this group, our sanctuary state laws have existed for multiple presidential administrations, 7+ Democrats and Republicans, and they've done so peacefully. We intend to continue to advise our agencies and others to follow our sanctuary state laws. We do not believe that those are in conflict with federal law. I think the challenge that we all face in our communities is safe spaces. And when we have people from the federal government that are trying to come into those spaces, the one thing that I will say as a state, as a country, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter if you're the president, whether you're an individual in law enforcement, you must follow the United States Constitution in that role. And so those are things that we're keeping track on. So just always have that in the back of your head as you're thinking about some of these questions. And I apologize for the panelists because I just want to make sure that we got to these. Candy, I think wherever you were asking about a statewide committee. I was just going to mention that we do have that. Our cabinet that is meeting, Dustin Bueller, who is in our office, and Faye Stetzwaters are leading that work on behalf of our work, and you can read a little bit about that. We are going to be doing a new federal Oversight and Accountability webpage, which will have an ability for community members across the state to really talk about the impacts that they have in their communities. You'll be able to get access to all these toolkits. That's in process right now. And then Bonnie, you asked about the visa withdrawals that just happened. I just learned about this today. Of course, we're hearing about this nationally. This is the first time I heard about it here in the state of Oregon. We knew this was coming to the state of Oregon. It's unacceptable in the way that these things are going. We are just learning some of the facts behind some of these, especially here in Oregon, and the way that it comes out. There is a lot of things that concern us with the facts that are just coming out today as we're learning them, and we'll be moving forward. What I can tell you in all issues, when we approach them as a state of Oregon, we look at our Oregonians being harmed in this state, people who are here in this state. Do we have standing as a state to move forward and bring a lawsuit or bring some sort of protection in that case? And what I'll tell you is not always do we have, Ken, I think in like the labor protections, there's a Schedule F removal. As a state, we realized that we were not the right person to enforce that. But what we did do is we partnered with our labor partners, and we filed an amicus brief to support the work that is being done. So just because we may not be the state that is the right party to enforce this, we can still support, and we will be doing that, specifically when it comes to the visa issue.
Thanks so much. Also to Candy, I would just say the legislature is very busy right now processing all of our bills, but as the session goes on a little bit more, there will be more time for us to have oversight hearings, both of state government agencies, but also more time to talk in our committees about what is happening at the federal level. So that is part of the plan. Specific to the question about protections for immigrants living in Oregon, I do think this is an area where the work leading up to this moment in time that we have done in Oregon is so important. I referenced in 2021, we have a long-standing sanctuary state law here in Oregon, as the AG referenced. And in 2021, we passed legislation in the legislature to strengthen that law so that law enforcement here in this state is on enforcing the law here and not on federal immigration law. But what hasn't been mentioned so far is a couple of years ago, we also set up a program to provide legal services for people who are here in this country who might have a pathway to citizenship. But there was someone who testified who talked about legal services being expensive. So it's really important that folks have access to those legal services. There are not that many attorneys here in the state doing that kind of work, but the legislature set up a program to try and expand access a few years ago, and that program has been doing very well. And then I just also want to say that headed into this session, we knew that part of our job in the legislature was to try and identify potential gaps in protections for Oregonians, whether that was gaps in workers' rights or environmental protection or immigrant rights or LGBTQ rights. And so part of our work this session has been to try and fill in those gaps. And we did some looking at discrimination protections that existed in other states but not in Oregon. A small example of that is related to housing discrimination for immigrants. So we have Senate Bill 599 this session that passed out of the Senate on a bipartisan vote. This is a bipartisan issue. And it prohibits discrimination in housing based on immigration status. So really proud of that work. There are I could go on with other bills that we're working on, but want to get to more questions.
Okay, another question. How many lawsuits is the state of Oregon party to? From Sharon. What do you anticipate the future regarding capacity and resources?
It's a very, what I will tell you, when I decided to run for Attorney General, I didn't think I would be up here saying within the first couple of months of a Trump presidency that we would have 12 lawsuits filed. I would tell you that I didn't think that I would be having this town hall here, being away from my family here tonight, and the importance of having people's voices being heard. So it has been a very different existence than what I anticipated moving forward. But right now, Oregon is a part of 12 different lawsuits, and all of them kind of are on some of the same issues, right? There's certain powers that are delegated under the Constitution. Certain things are in statute. Think about like the APA, right, where a lot of the attacks were going on are in that portion of law. And so those are where you're seeing that. Most of them are in funding and different allocations that are going throughout the state. We have one on birthright citizenship. That was the first lawsuit that was filed within 24 hours of the first executive order that was filed. The one thing that I would note as we've gone on this journey, right, we're continuing to gather more feedback. Today, it was very interesting. We're gathering feedback from one of the professors that came in and talked about grant money that was frozen today. That was something that we just learned right now. The impact of tariffs is another issue that we're looking into and trying to explore. What is the nexus and the powers that the president has to set powers under the Emergency Act and those different situations. So we are continuing to look at these things. And what I would tell you at the very beginning, we have Democratic attorneys general across this country that are partnering together to make sure that we're enforcing the rule of law, make sure that we're enforcing and holding people accountable to the Constitution and being agnostic about party, because this is really about a democracy.
Okay, and maybe a final softball, but Charlotte asked, DOJ has requested voter rolls from the states. I don't think Oregon should hand them over. What do you think?
We could just pass this down the line in terms of one of the things that we really do is we have expectations of privacy in our personal lives, right, as we walk through this world. We have expectations of privacy when we turn over our tax returns. I found it incredibly interesting that all of a sudden DOJ wanted to get a hold of all of our tax returns and our information when the president, during his first campaign, wouldn't turn over his own tax returns. One of the lawsuits that we filed actually was trying to prevent DOJ from getting access to information, and we did get some positive rulings in that case. I think those are the types of things that trickle down into the state and the information that the federal government is trying to access. One of the rules that we have in our sanctuary state is we do not use state resources to achieve federal aims in those spaces. We want our local law enforcement, we want our state agencies working on our own laws and the things that we're prioritizing as a state with our state dollars. The federal government uses their federal dollars and their resources to enforce federal laws under that. It's incredibly important. It's incredibly important for safety in community. We want people feeling comfortable talking to law enforcement without fear of federal retribution in that space. And that's what keeps us all safe in community. So these are the type of things that we're experiencing right now. Obviously, on the voter rolls, there are things, and what I can say is depending on the resources and whether they are public information, there are other public processes where people can get access to information through the normal public process, but it's delineating between those roles as things move forward.
No. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. About the last question?
No, don't worry about the last question.
Okay, great.
I was going to say, we've covered a lot
I
of
was
ground.
going to say,
and then pivot to
no. So just in response to some of the questions that people asked, I think it's really important to know that we are very lucky to have a Democratic majority in the state legislature. There are a lot of bills that were suggested by our Republican colleagues that simply would have not been the right thing to do for Oregonians. And some of them address the issues that were brought up tonight, things that were targeting our transgender community specifically, things that were targeting diversity, equity, inclusion in higher education, things that were undermining our environmental protections. And so one of the things that we work very actively to do as the majority is to stop this legislation that will hurt the programs and the rights of Oregonians. And please know that we are doing that every single day. The other thing I did want to mention is that as state representatives, we have the opportunity to lead in a way that brings us all together as a state. And so there is one bill that I have been proud to co-sponsor, which is a right to a healthy environment. And that bill would be basically sending a ballot measure to make a constitutional right for a right to a healthy environment. That is an example where the state... So that is an example where the state legislature can take leadership to unite us as Oregonians, as I think Candy said, where we can come together to declare in Oregon the values that we want to see in our Constitution. I did want to mention one other ballot initiative that is currently underway, which is Basic Rights for All, which is a ballot initiative which would basically change the constitutional language that says that marriage is between a man and a woman, and it would also put into the Constitution gender-affirming care and abortion and reproductive health care into the Constitution. That is something that we can all come together around as Oregonians that will hopefully be in our ballot. So I look forward to continuing to represent this community, and I look forward to standing with you and standing together to make sure that we have a safe place for everybody.
There's so many things I wrote notes about tonight. People are afraid to go to school. People are afraid to walk out their door. The degree of intimidation is alarming. Schools and houses of worship are no longer safe. Another quote, I hope it's a close quote, they're turning us into beggars for things we already paid for. So much of what is happening, I feel like, is their actions to test the Constitution, to test the powers of the executive branch or the powers of one person or even the powers of unelected people, testing the Constitution, and I'm extremely troubled about that. One of the areas that I work in a lot has to do with revenue. So one of the things I'm watching right now is what's going on with Congress, the budget. Are they going to pass an extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? Some people called it the Trump tax cuts. Are they going to extend it, expand it? This could have another huge impact on Oregon's revenue. In fact, even the Congressional Budget Office, other very either nonpartisan or even trending conservative organizations who are reviewing what's in the plan right now are saying that it's going to bust through our debt ceiling in a huge way. It's just remarkable how many trillions of dollars it will add to our deficit. And it's predicted that even though there may be an initial increase in economic activity, within 10 years it will actually show that it has slowed down the nation's economy. So all of this is really bad news. I'm watching all the time what this means for Oregon. Our state's economist said just sometime in the last couple of days how he's looking at this. He analyzed what happened in the last Trump administration, and in this Trump administration, he's finding that the proposals turn out to be about 10 times worse, the impact. So all of that is weighing on our minds heavily as we're trying to figure out what can we do, what can we pay for, when we would love to be a stopgap on policy and we would like to fill budget holes. We may be facing our own budget holes in a tremendously troubling way. I suppose the thing that I want to leave you with is that one additional thought is that Oregon is a home rule state, and so much of what happens locally, I'm looking at two of our really remarkable county commissioners sitting here with us tonight. So much of what we do as a state is implemented at a local level. And because of home rule authority, there's a lot of autonomy at the county and city level. And I think it's time that we review our relationships with counties and cities to make sure that laws and statutes that we pass as a state can be, will be, and are being followed by each and every county and by each and every city to protect you. Because at the end of the day, even though all of this stuff at the federal level is a terrible distraction, it's distracting from what we ordinarily would be doing to improve your situation. It's a distraction. I feel like we're just spending our day answering things that are taking away from our ability to serve you. But we're there every day working as fast as we can to be the stopgap, fill the holes, and continue to protect your interests.
Thank you. I am so proud to be in this fight with the three people who are up here in this table. And now when I say the word fight, I might picture the punches and kicks, whoever was talking about us kung fu fighting. And it's really been great to be in community here tonight. We are, as I said in my opening remarks, we are deep in the work of the session up in Salem, and so it's so great to be able to connect with people from our community and hear about what's going on, how you all are, what you're concerned about, what you are most worried about coming out of the federal government. We are fighting every day to respond to that chaos, and Attorney General Rayfield is leading the fights in the court, and we in the legislature are making sure that the policies that we passed over the last decade around protections for LGBTQ communities, reproductive rights, environmental rights, working families, that those protections are real, enforced, and are funded. And we're working to identify additional gaps and frankly to respond to whatever new thing is coming out of the federal government that we can do at the state level. So, and at the same time, we are working to address some of the big challenges at the state level: housing affordability, access to health care, making sure that we're protecting our basic rights and freedoms here in this state. And so if you are interested in what comes next, I really encourage you to stay engaged. We have, if you want to learn a little bit more about the specifics of the work that we are doing in the legislature this session, we are having a town hall, a virtual town hall, next Thursday, April 17th at 5 p.m. That town hall will be with myself, our House Majority Leader, Ben Bowman, Representative Ricky Ruiz from Gresham, and Willie Choatson, who is an attorney working on privacy issues in the legislature. And that town hall will be about what are the specific actions that the legislature is taking this session. There are flyers about how to join that, I think, out on the check-in tables, or look me up on social media. And then I do just want to say you should keep in communication with all of us up here at the dais. We have legislative emails. We will respond to your emails. We want to keep hearing what is going on in the community, and if you have questions about the work that we are doing to respond. So I want to thank you again to Attorney General Rayfield for hosting us, to the folks who testified here tonight, and for everyone for showing up. Your advocacy and your time here tonight really matters. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Attorney General.
And again, thank you to the amazing panel up here. Again, it is always fun to be together. And also, it's just wonderful to live in a state where we get to craft our vision here and what we want this state to look like 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And we get to do that with majorities in the House and the Senate and with amazing leadership in that space. And so I feel very fortunate to be in a state that goes to work every day, working to make this state one of the greatest places to live in the country, in my personal opinion. With that, also, thank you to Graham Tanner with the AFL-CIO. Thank you for being here today. And I'm saying... And then there were a lot of panelists who came up here and said, AG Rayfield, thank you for what you're doing in that space. And I always feel terribly awkward when that happens. And what I really want to point out is that while I may be up here talking here tonight, there is an amazing team of individuals at the Oregon Department of Justice that allows this state to do the work that it does. And with that, the Department of Justice is an amazing place to be. It is an amazing team to be a part of, from helping to deliver child support across this state to families that need it, to defending our values, to keeping our community safe with our criminal justice division. I feel very fortunate to be here with you, to be able to do all of these things and to have that luxury to serve the state of Oregon in this role at such an important time in our history as we're facing incredible challenges. So I just want to say thank you again for taking time out of your day. Thank you for sharing your stories here today. For those of you that were unable to testify today and you have other information, please know that we do want to hear from you. And there are ways to submit your story. As you walk out, there are going to be people here and they can connect you.